Hi everyone, and welcome to this Polestar 2 2-year 25,000 mile video. In this video I'm going to discuss my experience with the Polestar 2 over the last couple of years. Please bear in mind when you watch this that I have one of the original cars that was released into the European market. At that time there was just one model available. Later they released 3 different versions with optional upgrade packs. At the time of me getting this car there was just the one. Performance was also available, and I chose to get just the standard vehicle in black, which was at the time the cheapest option. So please bear that in mind, and if you need to have a look at the specifications you can find all that kind of information on the internet, but if you've got one of the newer cars it might differ. So in this video I'm going to discuss the car looks, the practicality, reliability, Google, range and charging, driving and handling, and how it compares with some of the new cars on the market today. So the first thing to think about is the car looks. I think the Polestar 2 looks fantastic, and it was one of the things that really pulled me into this car and made me interested in getting it in the first place. I actually signed up for a lease online without seeing the car, without test driving it, so I took a bit of a leap of faith there, and I think it was a good one because yeah, it's a great car and it looks fantastic. Now I'm going to show a few shots while I talk here that give you an idea of what the car looks like when it's not all clean and pristine, because most of the reviews that you see online will be in a perfect car that looks great. I haven't had the car washed for 6 weeks or something like that, maybe 2 months. It looks quite dirty. The black is not the best paint for that. You can see that sitting next to the car is a Kia Soul EV in red and white. It hasn't been washed either, and it doesn't look anywhere near as dirty as the black. So I will say if the look of the car is important, you're going to have to keep the black color clean, or I would probably choose one of the other colors. They don't show up the dirt quite as badly as the black does. So the car, yeah, it still looks fantastic. Like, look at the headlights, for example. When you turn those on and off, they look really cool. The tail lights, that's the same. When you turn those on and off, it looks fantastic. The styling and design is something that I really love about this car. So moving on to practicality. Now, I chose this car because it was one of the few available at the time that had a proper hatchback that was in my price range. So you can see in this shot I've got a whole load of bags and fishing gear in the boot of the car. That's something I like to do in my spare time, and another reason why my car ends up quite dirty. I take it down quite a lot of dirty, muddy tracks, but there's plenty of space to fit things into this car. The Tesla Model Y wasn't out at the time, and that does have a bigger boot and it will have more space, but the Polestar space is rarely practical. Like we took this car over to France during the school holidays last couple of weeks ago, and we were able to fit 3 suitcases and a whole load of bags wedged in the spaces in the boot. And yeah, it's perfect for a family of 4. You can easily fit everything that you need in there. When you fold the seats down, you've got lots of space to take bigger items if you want. Now, there are a couple of things that I don't find are great when it comes to practicality in this car, and this is my honest opinion. The sloping boot is really nice, but the automatic boot closure is very sensitive to resistance. So it means you've got to sometimes push on that boot to get it to close if there's anything that's going to block the window or even give it a sense of resistance. The slope is quite shallow, I'd say, so there isn't really much space for anything tall to go in that part of the car, and that can be a little difficult when you're trying to stack up some suitcases. Now, of course, that makes the car look great, and if it was an estate car version, it would store more, but it wouldn't look the same. So that is just something to be aware of. The boot space is good, but it's not very big. Then there's also the issue of storage around the driver's area and the practicality on that side. It's quite a tight squeeze. You can see in these interior shots, the middle console could get in the way of a lot of people. And taller drivers, I have read quite a bit about this, sometimes find it a little bit cramped because there isn't much space to move your legs side to side, especially when you look at some of the newer cars. The Tesla is very spacious in the front of the car. The Hyundai Ioniq 5 I mentioned is also very spacious at the front of the car. So that is something to bear in mind. There also isn't a lot of storage. There's enough space. There's a single cup holder here in the middle and another one under the armrest, but it's not a spacious car and it isn't very practical in that sense. We also have a bump here in the back. Now you can see in this shot, got some fishing rods there, my kids were in the car, plenty of space, but there is a hump in the middle. So if you have a third person sitting there in the middle, that can be quite irritating. The Kia Soul EV doesn't have that problem. Neither does the Tesla. So that is something to bear in mind, that some of the newer cars won't have that hump, and it's not something that Polestar wanted to have there. It's just the platform that this car is built on has that in place, and they've utilized that the best they possibly can. So the reliability of the Polestar 2 is a hot topic, and it's something that you will come across if you look at the Facebook groups or the online forums. I'd say most people seem to be complaining about TCAM issues, they're called, but there are a few issues with the car where people have found themselves in a position where they go out to the car and it just doesn't work anymore, and then they need to be recovered. They can't even drive the car, they can't even move the car, and that is extremely frustrating. However, I would say from my own personal experience in this car, I haven't had any reliability issues. It's been great. The thing that I have had happen in the car that is annoying is the loss of internet signal. Now, this was a big problem early on in the life of the car, where sometimes it would go away for days, and the tethering option through the system to allow it to tether to your phone just didn't work. But that was resolved with software updates, and now I would say that I probably lose signal every now and again, sort of once or twice a week, and it might go away for 30 minutes and it might come back, but it won't always tie in with loss of signal on my phone. So it's not as if it's just simply losing signal on the network. It will just not work, and that is annoying, because this type of car is designed to work with the internet. Things like Google Maps just don't really function properly. A lot of the apps don't function properly either. But I'd say that issue has mostly been resolved. The other issue that we did have in France, and I've had this once or twice, where it won't get a GPS signal lock. So you could drive around almost all day. In fact, I think it happened for half a day in France, where it thought we were still in the UK. It wouldn't get a GPS lock when we arrived. Even if I got out the car and shut it all down, tried to do various tricks, restarts, just didn't work. Eventually, it just came back to life and it was fine. But those types of things do come up. Other reliability issues, though, I haven't had any, and this car has been great. 25,000 miles without any issues. Fingers crossed it stays that way. I have had to replace a couple of tires, but that was only because of tire damage. I had a nail in one, and when I took it in for the service, one of the other tires had a cut in it. But that's not a reliability issue on the side of Polestar. That's just simply life having any kind of car. So then moving on to the next subject I wanted to talk about is the Google system. You'll see in all of my older videos, I've talked about this a lot, and my own feelings about this. The Google Maps system and the tablet system is very good, but I would say now that we're 2 years into ownership, I'm a little bit disappointed that it hasn't really grown very much. There are a few apps that are new that have been added, like charging point apps. We've got most of the music apps like Spotify, and Amazon is on there now, YouTube. That's great, but some of those apps aren't very good. The Spotify app is possibly the worst version of this app I've come across. It's not easy to use, even when there's a passenger sitting there. Sometimes my wife has to operate Spotify, because if you're driving, you can't really look away and use it. And bizarrely, it can actually be quite difficult to find things. The search function isn't very good. These aren't issues that are the fault of Polestar, but I thought, and I really hoped, that with a Google system like this, that there would be lots of other manufacturers that would adopt it. There would be a lot more investment put into it. But not much has changed. Just a handful of apps have come out, and it doesn't seem like many other manufacturers are that interested in supporting it. I've also noticed that a lot of people want to use Apple CarPlay anyway with this system. So that's now supported, which is great, but that means more people are plugging in their Apple phone and using the Apple system. So yeah, it's good, but I would have liked to have seen it evolve and develop a lot more. There is such an opportunity for more data, more information, more interesting apps on the Polestar, but actually what you find is that if you drive a Tesla, you'll almost find that there's more that you can do in a Tesla menu and through the system than you can on this one, even though this one potentially could allow loads of apps to be there. And I've even notice that if you look online at something like the Ioniq 5 and have a look at what's available within their system, there's way more that you can control and customize than there is on this Google-based system. So yeah, it could be better. I'll just leave that there, because I'm not being overly negative. I'm just simply highlighting the fact that I don't think it's evolved as much as I'd hoped it would. So now we move on to range and charging. Again, with any electric car, this is a hot topic. People get rarely wound up about range, charging, consumption data, and I understand that, because that's often what people would think about with any vehicle. Polestar is not the most efficient per kilowatt hour. So I'm lucky to get 3 miles per kilowatt hour. And really what that means is that on a good day, I'll probably get 210 to 230 miles of range from this car. On a bad day in the winter when it's cold or the roads are wet, it might be as little as 180 miles. I think that's the worst I ever got. So again, the Polestar is not the car to choose if you want the most efficiency. It is a heavy car. But what I will say is the newer models that are available, single motor, heat pump, there are technologies that have improved that range. And even on my car, the software updates have made a difference. I get more range now than I did when I originally had this car due to some of those software updates. But the range is not superb. However, for me, if 220 miles, that's absolutely fine, because that's about 3 hours driving at 70 miles an hour. Maybe 2.5 if you're, on a bad day when you're not getting great range. But if you've got kids in the back, 2.5 hours I'd say is the limit, really. And actually it's often the limit for me, because I feel quite tired. You might need to use the bathroom. So I don't have any issues with the range being only around 220 miles. And typically, even though I do about 12,000 miles a year, we probably only do a handful, maybe 3 or 4 trips a year that actually require charging, because I'll charge at home. So every day when I get home, I can plug my car in, or we plug my wife's car in. We alternate. We charge on a 4-hour cheap Octopus Go tariff overnight, and then we're good to go again in the morning. So our driving style is one that allows us to charge on an ongoing basis. And that is something that's pretty decent with the Polestar. It's not the fastest car to charge now on the market. Look at something like the Hyundai Ioniq 5 that I believe can do up to 350 kilowatts. But how many chargers are there that can even give you that? There aren't that many. So again, I have hit the 150 kilowatt in the Polestar recently, and that's really quick. If you think about it, you can go inside, get a coffee, use the bathroom, come back out, and you've probably gone from 10 up to 70, 80% before you even know it. And that's actually what I found in the last experience of charging, that I had to rush back to the car because I was being slow. So I would say that, yeah, charging is great. No major issues with the car, and the range I'm perfectly happy with. One thing I will say about charging, you can set a charging timer, and I'll show you on the screen the charging timer system. It does work quite well, but the app in the Polestar isn't anywhere near as good as the app that Kia have for the Soul EV. That has a lot more customization in terms of what you do and you interact with the car. That's something that I'd like to see Polestar improve on. The charging options are there and the scheduling is available, but it's not implemented, I'd say, in the most user-friendly and easiest way to use. Okay, so I now want to talk about driving and handling, and this might be the most important thing in the video, because the driving and handling in the Polestar is superb, and it is probably the main reason I think that people choose this car. I might be wrong, it might be the looks, the styling, but for me, I think the driving and handling is absolutely superb. It can at times be a little bit firm on harder roads or over potholes, but it is very precise. It handles the road and it really sticks like glue to the surface if you're going around corners fast. Just as a sense of comparison, the Kia Soul EV, it's a square boxy car. It's much more comfortable on the road, actually. It's softer suspension, but you can't throw it around the corners like you can the Polestar. And the steering is quite light in the Kia. The Polestar is just right. I never really fiddle with the settings to change in fact, I never change it. You can change the steering feel, you can change the one pedal drive. I never touch it. I always leave the steering feel on standard and the one pedal drive on low. It just works perfectly for me. That one pedal drive allows you to take your foot off the accelerator. The electric motors will kick in and slow the car down all the way to a stop. So if you get that time just right, you could remove your foot from the accelerator when coming off a motorway, and it will slow the car down all the way to a stop. And it's just, yeah, that I find is something that just makes the driving so relaxing. The autonomous driving, basically it will stick within a lane on the motorway, and that works very well. The cruise control will follow the car in front. It will slow you all the way down to a stop. You can change how close you are to that car in front. Really great features that are fantastic and something really enjoyable on this car. But yes, I cannot fault the driving and the handling. It's superb. The power, now this car is just over 400 horsepower, so it's 0 to 60 in just under 5 seconds, is superb. Yeah, it might be nice to have a little bit more power, and if you do want that, it is available on certain cars with a software upgrade for a fee. But I haven't really felt the need to pay for that because I'm driving a leased car. When I give the car back, I've just lost that extra money. To me, it didn't seem worth it. This is probably the exact sweet spot for power, really, in any kind of car, because I think anything faster, anything with more acceleration than this will be great fun to drive, but you're not going to really use that often. And if I've got my kids in the car, my wife's in the car, I have to warn them if I'm going to floor it, put my foot down, if the opportunity presents itself, because they find it quite sickening. If you look at something like a Tesla Model S or Model Y or Model 3 Performance, some of those can do insanely fast 0 to 60 times, and even the new Kia EV6, I believe, there's a performance version of that, and that is under 4 seconds 0 to 60. Now that's the type of thing that, yeah, it's going to be great fun, but I don't know how often you really need that kind of power. So yeah, perfectly happy with the Polestar in that regard. So now I come to my final topic, and this is, how does the Polestar 2 compare with some of the new rivals on the market? And actually, this is possibly where you have to put a bit of consideration into your choices. If you are looking at buying a Polestar 2, yes, I'd have no hesitation in recommending it. I've loved having it for the last 2 years. But there are other cars out there that are really good, and some of the manufacturers have caught up. They've come up with newer, more interesting cars with often a lot of features that don't exist on the Polestar. I think the first thing I would highlight is the Polestar app. It's just not that good. I don't want to be negative, but again, it isn't. If you have tried the Tesla app, which I have tried, or you've used the Kia or Hyundai app, the Polestar will be a bit disappointing. Firstly, it's difficult to pair with a car. Secondly, you have to redo the whole process if you change your phone, and that's very annoying. The Kia app is really easy. You get a new phone, you install the app, you log in, and you're good to go. So that's frustrating. It probably took me about 20 minutes each time, maybe 30 minutes, to figure out how to install and set up the app every time I've changed my phone. And I find that kind of annoying. The app doesn't always work. I find it a little bit unreliable. You can use your phone as a key, but I've again found the app not to be perfectly reliable for me, so I don't take that risk. I use the phone as key if I need to unlock the car and I've left my keys inside, but I don't tend to go out without my actual key just in case it lets me down. And there's very little that you can control. You can do scheduled timing through there, you can activate the climate control, but if you have a look at the Kia app, if you look that up online and read a bit about that, you can do lots of things in there. You can monitor the 12-volt battery. You can do all kinds of timer scheduling. You can look at a lot of data. There's just more control you have over the phone, and I'd say the app is easier to use and a little bit more user-friendly than the Polestar app. So that's an area where they do need to do a little bit of catching up. And then if you look at overall technology, the Hyundai Ioniq 5 is a car that I'm seriously considering getting when my lease ends in 12 months. Partly because it's slightly more practical, I think, in terms of boot space. It looks superb, but it's also got quite a lot of interesting features. It, for example, has a nice open fronted space to it, so it doesn't have this center console in the way. The cup holders and center console can move backwards and forwards. The rear passenger seats are adjustable, so they can recline, they can actually move a little bit. It's got dual 12-inch displays with a lot that can be customized through the menus. For example, you can set the colors in the car as you would like them. The Polestar doesn't have the option to change that. You can't just decide to have it purple or red. I know that's not a deal breaker for sure, but you know, the Hyundai is capable of charging much faster. So there are bits of technology, the Kia EV6 is the same, that those types of technology are shared, that are appearing on other manufacturers' cars that do make them perhaps a little bit more class leading in that sense. The Polestar 2 was superb 2 years ago when it was released. There was almost no real competition other than the Teslas or maybe the I-Pace or something like that in that section of the market. But in the last 2 years, other manufacturers have released their cars, namely Kia, Hyundai, and then there's BMWs. There's a whole range of different options. But in this price point, you really do have to think about what you want in your car. Polestar is going to be superb for someone that really values the handling, the driving experience, and all the safety aspects that come with the affiliation with Volvo. But other people might find that actually for the price, for slightly less money, you might get yourself a little bit more if you look at Hyundai and Kia as an example. So hopefully this video has been useful. It's not a classic review style video. I just wanted to talk more about my own experiences and how I feel about owning this car for 2 years. I would not hesitate to recommend the Polestar to anybody. It's been an absolutely superb car. It's looked after us very well, and we've enjoyed driving it for the last 25,000 miles. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back again with another video very soon. Thank you.